Okay, hello everyone and welcome to our today's Vaadin webinar. And we are going to discuss today about load testing and how to load test it, especially Vaadin applications. And my name is Matti Tahvonen. I'm a Vaadin evangelist, and we have a Henrik here, and you are from Neotys.
Yep, correct. And today we are going to talk about how to load test Vaadin applications. So it's going to be a sort of cookbook.
Yeah, so generic stuff about load testing, not just load testing with Neotys tools, but you have like one pretty nice product.
Yep.
From then, and then you have this new plugin that you introduced to Neoload. So it's pretty easy to use Neoload with Vaadin applications nowadays.
Yeah, you will see that we will do a demonstration.
Yeah.
And during this webinar, we will try to give tips and best practices around designing Vaadin applications. So there will even if you don't use Neoload, I think it could a lot of sense today.
To like kind of how you should plan your test cases and what you should test there. And
yep.
Yeah, and what kind of problems kind of Vaadin raises, because Vaadin is not a typical web application, so there are quite a many kind of tricks that you have to know to do load testing properly. Depending, well, it doesn't matter what testing tool you have to use or what testing tool can you use, but you just need to know a bit about the communication that Vaadin makes, and we will discuss about what kind of communication or component IDs Vaadin is using and different kind of security measures that you need to disable or somehow handle in your load tests.
Okay, so the agenda, like mentioned, we will see the hot topic of today, which is the best practices of creating Vaadin applications. But before that, I think it would make sense that we do a small introduction on reminding the importance of performance, reminding as well what is load and performance testing, and maybe sometimes we forget about the methods around it. And then, of course, the big topic will be a demonstration at the end, which will basically highlight what we have presented so far on the best practices part. So let's go. Performance matters. So here I have extracted 3 references, but basically you can Google performance issues 2015 or 14, and you will have a lot of interesting stuff about Black Fridays, for example, or recently you had Star Wars. I mean, they delivered a website where you can book your tickets in advance. Unfortunately, it didn't handle the load. I mean, they didn't expect so much traffic. So load testing is important because basically if you have some damage with the load, it will impact directly the brand of your business and also the revenue. So I think let's just talk about the last reference we have on the slides. It's Amazon. I mean, it's an old study. It's about 5 or 6 years old. They just did a study on the impact on performance on their revenue. So every time they were losing 100 milliseconds on their websites, on their pages, they were losing 1% of revenue. Yahoo did the same sort of study, Google as well. So that proves directly that response times is very important, especially when you talk about user experience. So before we get to the topic, I think let's take a few seconds and try to figure out and understand how our brain is perceiving performance. So here we can see on this slide, here we have 3 limits, the 0.1 second, the 1 second barrier, and then we get the 10 seconds. So basically, if your apps answer in 0 to 0.1 second, it's instantly. So it's like reading a book. You're turning a page, everything is rendered, so you focus and you're reading things on the screen. Once we get to the 1 second limit, then we start thinking simultaneously, which means we have those thoughts that pops up in our minds that has no relation with the application or the information. Basically, I can think, tonight I have to pick up the kids, or did I launch the dishwasher, or whatever it is. So no relation, we have those thoughts that pops up. So if the response times increase, then more and more thoughts pops up in our minds, and basically it's just annoying. And from the moment we reach 10 seconds, our user is not paying attention at all to the websites. So we have lost a user. So the conclusion is slow apps are stressful because it requires 50% more attention for our users. So let's be gentle. Let's guarantee that we deliver good applications. Let's guarantee that we deliver good user experience so we can secure the business and secure the, be nicer with the users. Other aspects, many teams says, I got the best coders in the world. I got the best architecture of the world. I got the best servers of the world. That's maybe true. I mean, I can guarantee that. But it's to say, here you can highlight with this Lego minifigures, where even if you're the strongest man on earth, if you apply too much weight, basically you break. So it's the same with an app. So if you have too much load or too much spikes, your app is going to break. So
yeah, every application will break at some point, but it's kind of good to know that when it's going to break and how.
Yeah,
then you can decide that if you need to make it last more, or if you need to rethink about the architecture or something.
Yeah, we are here to cover the risk. We don't want to have some big surprising production. That's the idea. And last, I think it's I really love to make the relation with video games or Legos, and it's the way we've been handling performance testing in the past, or some companies is still doing it like this. Here it represents Street Fighter. So for those who doesn't know Street Fighter, it's video games from the 90s where you have two fighters that were supposed to fight, and you have to win that fight. And sometimes during this game you had a bonus stage. So the idea of the bonus stage, you had that car, and you were just hitting the car to get points. So the car will be represented by the application. So we were waiting that the car were assembled, the car were finished, or the apps were finished. We were testing at the very last mile of the project. And then people were testing it, and they didn't know how to do that. So they were hitting the application. They were hitting the application exactly like that fighter that hits the car without knowing why. So what did you prove? Yes, I break the app.
Yeah.
But is it aligned with real production data, or real conditions, or real interaction of real users? There is a methods behind load testing. So if you want to prove that your application handle load, then apply the right load policy. That's the key.
Yeah, so you should most often like simulate the real user interactions there, and not just requesting the front page is not enough, but you have to kind of make the things that your actual users are doing on your web application.
We are not there to qualify the cache. I mean, we know our cache works fine, so let's try to qualify the rest of the application. So load and performance testing. Just to remind how it goes. So I really like that it's a sentence that has been said by Steve Jobs. People, I mean, there is very technology-driven companies. They have the methods, they have the technology to deploy automated in production and react when depending on the users. So that's great. But sometimes we are not enough mature to work like this. So we cannot let our customers be the testers of our applications. I mean, even if we have implemented months and lots of efforts to design the architecture, to code the system and so on, if something goes wrong, basically our customers is measuring on what we're delivering. They don't care about how hard we've been working. So that's the idea. So please remind this. So how do we test that? Yeah, basically, we want to avoid any crash in production. We want to secure the deployment. We want to make sure that nothing going to be wrong on our application. So there is a workflow. I mean, many people know that workflow. And first step is you have to design. So define the right testing strategy with which load policy, which use cases, which data sets, and so on. Once you have defined that strategy, we will create those business scenarios by recording them. We will see that later on. And we have to correlate parameterization, randomization is key, otherwise we will just hit the cache. Then we will prepare the environment, prepare the load testing architecture, prepare maybe the data sets, the database to be aligned with the production database. And then we will run the test that we were probably prepared or imagined during the testing strategy. Run those tests, and don't run the test and go to bed or go to a bar and drink beers. No, keep on in front of your screen, looks at the data, look at the logs. The idea, we are trying to fish for problems. It's the best moment. You want to have a problem, understand why you got the problem, have the proper data from the monitoring, from the servers to make the right decisions. So we analyze, and once we figure out that maybe we can tune our application server or we can change some things on the code, then we don't go live directly. We have to retest it to make sure that the recommendation or the tuning has made any positive effects or negative effects. Now with the new methods, DevOps, Agile, the process is slightly different because we want to test as early as possible. We cannot wait that our application is assembled to test or start testing. So basically here is an Agile development lifecycle where you got the requirements. From the requirements you will manage the backlog, and this is where you're going to implement the performance strategy, qualify what you're going to test to cover properly your risks. Then you plan the sprints. In the sprints, you know exactly which API, which services, which component, and then you got a sprint. So here, during the nightly build, you will test each component by generating load on them. So you will be able to trend on daily basis the performance of your components. Then you ship your app to, you assemble your application with all those components together. You deploy them in an environment, and then you will focus more on end-to-end testing from the UI. Testing from the mobile devices, for example. So we want to make sure that the user experience at that level is acceptable. And then we go on production, and our effort is not finished. We want to monitor because we want to proactively detect issues before users. We don't want to lose business. We talk about it. We don't want to have a negative impact on our brand. So we're going to monitor properly our application. And then we've got feedback. I'm not talking about infrastructure monitoring. I'm not talking about network monitoring. Of course, I'm talking about APM, synthetic monitoring, real user monitoring, and so on.
How long do you think your typical test case or typical test set for web applications for your customers, how long does the test case kind of take to execute?
I mean, the end-to-end testing,
yes.
We can say if the scenario is prepared, a couple of days is enough. I would say that 1 week test is enough to properly...
So very long.
It's very long, but it depends what you want to cover in terms of requirements. Sometimes you just want to test, okay, how does my application react when I have, 10,000 concurrent users? Or maybe I want to test, what about if I shut down one server to see if the user or the failover works well. So it really depends what you want to test. Because of course you can test during month and month, but it's always a relation between risks and what your requirements, because you can test many things in fact. But 2 days or 1 day could be enough depending on what you want to test. And this is exactly a good question, because depending on the environment, you won't test the same thing. I mean, if I'm in development environments, I will maybe have 1 or 2 servers, but in production I have maybe 50 servers. So I won't apply the same load. So during the development environment, I will be focused on the code, on the robustness of the code. So component testing, soak testing to see if there is any memory leak, and so on. And then we go to QA. There we will see maybe requirements regarding how it reacts with the load, how many connections, how many sessions I'm able to handle on my environment. Then when I go to a bigger environment, then I could be more focused on user experience. How does it happen when I include network constraints? How does it works when I got a failover? Or what happens when I generate load from outside? Is my network equipment properly sized? So depending on the environment, you won't test the same thing. And of course, this is an example, but depending on the requirement that you have and the risks that you want to cover, you will do more or less testing, in fact. So let's talk about the design. This is our topic today. So before we get to Vaadin, let's remind how a normal web app works. So this is a workflow where you got a client, you got an application, so a server. When I start trying to log in an application, I will send HTTP requests or other technology or service, whatever it is, to a server. This server will send me back a response, and probably there I will have a token or a session ID or whatever it is. And this session or this token, I need it when I will do other actions. So if I do here a search for a customer, I will need that token. Otherwise, I won't be able to, I will have probably technical errors. I won't be able to achieve my use case. So this extraction of a token is called correlation or parameterization. So this is very easy because it's a question and answer. You extract from one location, you resend it back later on. So that's quite logic. What makes Vaadin different? Basically, every time you click somewhere or you do a user action on the screen, it generates a request related to a component.
Yeah, and those requests are like related to the components and not exactly to the logic as with the traditional web applications.
Exactly.
Because Vaadin abstracts away the kind of communication layer, so all the communications are dependent to actual components and not like the application logic.
So here, I mean, we will need also to correlate, and we will see why we need to correlate. Remember, we want to test, we want to automate, we are having a lot of small time to test. Maybe we're going to use Jenkins to trigger our test automatically. So we're going to build a new app, and every day maybe we're going to test different stuff. So correlation and those components, that would need to be extracted. That would need to be correlated. And we'll see how to do that. So Vaadin, we could compare Vaadin like a cookbook. So basically, if you look at kitchen TV or whatever it is, the guy starts and say, okay, today we're going to do a cake, we need sugar, we need flour, we need, and so on. So all the ingredients of the cake are listed. And this is the same thing in Vaadin. So here we have an example with the login screen. So you can log in text field, you got a password and a button. So Vaadin will basically...
It will automatically kind of assign these IDs to these components.
Yeah, so it will basically declare those components. Saying text field is ID1 here. Password is ID2. So this is related to components. And then afterward, I have to fill the login field. So here, login field, we will say that login field is an ID10 and it's related to the type 1. So 1, remember, is the text field. So once one component has been referred in a page, Vaadin won't declare it another time. It will point to the ID. I don't know if it's clear, but yeah. It's very technical, you can say. So here basically it highlights this principle where you got the home login screen with the text field, the password and button. So those has been declared on the previous slide. So 1 and 2 and 3. So here you got the text field 1 and the button is referred by 3. Next page, we got a screen with a customer list, with a table. And on the bottom of the screen, you got a small panel where you can create new users, for example, or new customers. And those, for the form for that, you got a text field and a password. So in that new page, Vaadin won't declare again the text field and the button because it has been already declared.
Yeah. The client side already knows that type 1 is text field.
Exactly. So this is basically, it's very obvious, but the performance testers or the performance engineers, the logic is so different, so they will be lost. So you have to understand the principle, and once you have understand, you will see it's a piece of cake to create scenarios. So yeah, let's see how to create Vaadin scenarios then. So, like Yoda will say, I will say, handle technical parameters you must, and this is the key. There are, of course, there are components, there are functional parameters such as login, the emails, and whatever it's related to the application, but Vaadin requires technical parameters related to Vaadin's layer.
It will make like lots of like a security verifications that you have your request from the client goes in the same order or in a right order, and this is for the synchronization ID, and then we have like security related parameters as well. So this is kind of essential for the application that if there is some request that is dropped on the way, then the application shouldn't continue anymore. And this is where this synchronization ID is used.
Basically, it will generate an error if you...
Yes.
Okay. So here, this is an example where we have the first request. So we initialize the Vaadin context with component and everything. And here, Vaadin will send back to the response, say, okay, now the sync ID is 1. So here, I will extract 1, the sync ID, and then when I will do the next requests, I will need to pass the sync ID 1. So Vaadin will say, oh, that's correct. So I will pass the sync ID 2, and so on. So it will increment every time it's been properly accepted by the server, it will increment the sync ID. So you can extract it like this, or if you doesn't want to create variables, there's another way to do that. You can disable this mechanism by updating the WebXML file, and you have to add the following line. So basically we disable the sync ID. I'm not very fan of this, basically, because basically I'm touching the environment. I'm not testing on real conditions.
Yeah, I think it shouldn't matter that much about the actual performance of your Vaadin application if you disable these. But on the other hand, you will have to make another kind of deployment for performance testing, because you do want to have this enabled in a production environment.
Yeah, of course. There will be a big problem if we go on live with this parameter.
Yeah, and typically actually this synchronization ID, you can pretty much leave it as such when you are making load tests, but if you are maintaining your load tests, then you will have a big problems when these change. So if you want to make a change to your script, test script later on, then if you don't have this handled probably, then your test script will be pretty much broken from the first change that you make to the actual application.
The second one is the CRSF token. So this is also a technical parameter, and it's required to be sent on each request. The same thing, same logic. When we send the initialization request, Vaadin sends us a token. And this token, we have to extract it and send it back every time we send a Vaadin request to the application. Like before, if you don't want to handle it, of course, you could disable by changing the WebXML file. And here is the line that you have to change by disabling the XSRF protection. Again, you can do that, but if you're doing continuous deployment, continuous delivery, and so on, then again you need to have two settings: one for the load testing and the one for the others. So that's could be something annoying depending on how you manage a project. So how we talked about the cookbook, the way in Vaadin define components, and then the way we're going to refer it later on. So let's see how the logic to extract the component itself. And you will see why it makes sense, in fact, to do that. Because if you want, you could leave it static without handling the IDs of your objects and components. But if you want to guarantee that your scenario are stable between each build, then that's the logic you will have to implement in your testing scenarios. So how, first aspect, all the component like text field, password, state, checkbox, everything requires to send an object ID. And this ID, in fact, is related to component, so a type of component. And if you look at a Vaadin response, there is a map within it, inside of the response, called type mappings. And this type mappings map basically is like the definition of the different component that we have in our page. So here we got an example where com-Vaadin UI abstract text field, so it's a text field, will be linked to ID 17. And then if I want to extract the object where I'm clicking or filling in the form, I need the object, the ID of that object. And to do that, I will need the ID of the object, the component, so 17 in my case, to extract the proper object ID. So because in the response of a Vaadin request, you have a map called types, and this is linking the object with the types that you have in your page. So here in our example, 3, the object 3 is an object 17. So 17 is an abstract text field. So it's the field, it's the input field that I'm trying to update. Other type of object is tabs, menu, where in a menu or a tab you have several elements, or in the tabs you have several elements where you click on it. If you want to make sure that every time you click on the right tab, then you need to correlate that component ID, of course, and the key, the index, the right tab where you're clicking on the UI. So to extract that, you will need, of course, the component ID. So we will have the same logic that we have explained with the text field, the password, and so on. So once we have the ID, we need also the caption or the name of the menu, the name of the tab.
That will be kind of our key in the test.
Yeah, that's true. So for example, if I want to click here in my case on the catalog menu or on the catalog tab, then I need to include in my extraction logic the name of the index of the tab I'm clicking on, because what we are looking for is to extract the key number.
So with this kind of, if you have this kind of logic in your test script, now you can kind of insert a new tab into your tab sheet, and then the test case will still work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if you're only clicking on the positions 3 every time, then, like mentioned, if I include the new things, maybe 3 will be something else.
Yeah, you would actually have to push on the key 4 probably.
So objects, menus, and so on, you need to handle that if you want to make sure that your scripts are stable and robust doing different releases. So that's the key. Otherwise, you will spend lots of time maintaining your scenarios, re-recording, and I think it doesn't make sense when you have a very small window to test. Other aspects, and in fact we talked about it, is about the fact that if you have you don't send the right sync ID, then Vaadin will generate an error.
Yeah.
And errors in Vaadin are not 404 errors, are not HTTP 500 response code. It's a 200 response code. So if you just control the HTTP response code, basically there's a big chance that
you will be talking to an empty box, because Vaadin server will ignore all your messages and it doesn't tell you anything about the actual performance.
And again, it's what you're looking is not to hit a front door of the application. You want to get inside of that door and test the content of the
execute the actual UI logic, and especially the logic behind the UI logic, like all the database queries and stuff like that.
So the key to that is to create assertions. So assertions is a functional validation or text control, we can say that. So we will put a text control on each Vaadin request, and we will make sure that the response of my Vaadin request doesn't contain the following pattern, which is out of sync. So that's will, from my perspective, will make sure that at least I'm always having a good response. All right, then there are other type of communication with Vaadin.
Push communication, which is pretty handy in Vaadin, because you just need to annotate it with push.
So it's nothing for the technically it's nothing, but for a tester it's a big world.
It's actually, there is quite a big difference. There is like a different kind of protocol. There is not like standard HTTP protocol, but WebSocket. And then actually, because we are using Atmosphere, a handy library that will kind of abstract away all the difficulties that you have to implement this kind of push technology. So it will fall back to long polling, for example, if needed, but it will also modify, Atmosphere will modify a bit the actual content of the messages that we send between the client and the server. and that actually makes it a bit more difficult as well.
Yes, basically we will maybe see it later when we go to Neoload. In WebSocket there is a tricky part where atmosphere includes the size of bytes that we exchange.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you don't handle that, basically atmosphere will block the traffic and say,
yeah, for example, if you have your parameters, like a dynamic parameters that you push to your server, like load test with a random messages, and these random messages are different sizes, then that would break if you don't handle this size parameter.
Or even though if I just have different login names or
exactly,
so this will be just. So Vaadin could utilize WebSocket or long polling. So if the browser doesn't support WebSocket, then he will switch to long polling automatically. Most of the time, Vaadin is using asynchronous. So what asynchronous means? What means synchronous? There is two types of communication with WebSocket. So the first type will be, let's explain asynchronous. Asynchronous is like you have a client, you got a server, and the good example would be a trading application, for example, where
where the clients are mostly listening to the traffic that comes from the server.
So if I want, for example, to trade $1, then I want to make sure that I always have the right price of the dollar in real time. So if the server detects, for example, that the price has been updated, then he will push me automatically the new prices, and then the UI will react and display it. So Vaadin can work like this, where the server detects something and then he will interact with the client to update the UI.
Yeah.
Or we have the other way, which is synchronous.
Yeah, like in most cases.
Exactly.
The actual communication is started from the client side. When user clicks something, it goes to the server and comes back with a response.
We could compare by finally synchronous WebSocket to HTTP, you could say, where you got a request and a response.
Yeah.
So the challenge of WebSocket is also about how do I calculate response times? I mean, it's a request sent by the server. So how do I measure this time? And that will be a challenge. And with the synchronous model here, it will be much more easier because if you make the link properly, the right request with the right response, then you're able to measure the response times. And the challenge when it comes to designing a Vaadin scenario using WebSockets where I click somewhere or I fill somewhere in a form is to link the right requests with the right response. Once you have made that possible, then the logic that we explain with the component, with the objects, with the keys, and with the sync ID and whatever it is, will be the same. So once you have make that change possible, then no big surprise, you can correlate. And there is one limitation is what we explained with atmosphere, where you have to send the size of the bytes every time you exchange with the server. So that's unfortunately. There will be a lot of code, or you could basically utilize the codec that we have delivered with Neoload that automatically handle this the size of the bytes. So let's look at a short demonstration. I'm looking at the time left. I think we have around 10 to 15 minutes to do that. So let's go open Neoload. So this is Neoload. For those who want to use Neoload for load Vaadin, I think it's important that I remind that the Vaadin is a plugin, and all the plugins is available in our lab. So if you go to you will have the links, of course, at the end of the webinar.
Yeah, we can paste them to the forum, so then you can just click them.
So basically, if you want to have the link here, you go to support section. And there is a section called Neotys Labs, and from there you will have at the bottom the Vaadin content that you need to include in Neoload. And of course there is a documentation that will help you to configure properly Neoload. So let's go back to Neoload. So on the design aspect, so let's so here I got already a user that is a user that has been prepared. But what I want to do now is do a new fresh record. So let's do a very simple recording on an application and to apply the same logic that we explained. And then we could run a test with an existing user. And also I will show you WebSocket later as well. So let's record. So to record, I will go here and click on the recording button, and that will pops me the start recording window. So let's create a user that will filter on the address book. So we will use the address book available on your...
Yeah, running on my computer, and it's like a real application with a database. It's actually in-memory database, but there is still like a database,
and it's running on GBoss or something.
Yeah, in Wildfly.
Yeah, Wildfly.
So like kind of the upstream version of JBoss.
Just let me pick the because we changed the IP address. Let me pick the address. So let's record. So now when recording, Neoload pops up the recording panel. Open my browser. So in my case, it's Internet Explorer. And here I will create a container. So I'm going to hit the home page. And I'm going to reach the environment, which is HTTP and the port. And it's GPA address book.
Yes.
Like this. Up here it is. We got the UI rendered. And let's do the filter. So I'm gonna click here, type an example like Zad Davies, for example, and I will filter on this name. So let's do the filter. So filter and type ZAHN. So now we filter. We're happy. So let's stop the recording. So either I can stop the recording here, or basically I could just close the browser. So now. Oh yes, now Neoload is closing the recording, so if you have any browser open, you will try to link the right socket. So let's keep that step because there was Firefox open, so he thought there was other sockets open. So once the recording has been finished, we have that post-recording wizard that appears. And what I would like to highlight is the framework. We have a predefined framework, a Neoload framework for Vaadin. So I will skip the search dynamic step here, and I will let Neoload apply the framework. So here Neoload detects parameters related to different technologies, and here you can see that I got Vaadin with the sync ID and CRSF token that we mentioned before. So here I'm gonna unclick, of course, the technologies that are not related to my app, because I don't want to, there is no Silverlight, so I don't see why I should apply Silverlight technologies, and I will click next. So now I will just click next, and now we have this user that has been available. So let's zoom on this user, and you can see that we got our 2 transactions, and you can see that we have several web pages. And let's expand everything. Oh, sorry. And here we can see that all Vaadin requests will be represented by this icon here, and we see that we are presenting the Vaadin request into XML. So you can see that there are a couple. This is a Neoload parameter, so you can see that Neoload had handled that parameter automatically. Next request, for example, in the bottom of the request, we can see that the CRS token has been replaced. So this has been, and the sync ID in the top is also handled. So this is already handled. I don't have to change anything on the environment. So now
it's kind of a maintainable if you want to do some manual changes or...
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, if I replay back now, we mentioned the object is the same, so it will work. If I want to just could replace my, we type ZEA here and ZEH. Instead of typing this, I could import, for example, some dataset here and to correlate that scenario. But here, that's not my idea. What I would like is to apply the logic that we had previously. We explained with the component, the types, and so on. So here we got an ID 18. Which is 18 refers to the text field that we have where we filtered. And this text field will be, of course, available on the initialization request, which is the first one, this first Vaadin request. So here I'm going to click on Advanced button here to create an extractor. So with the extractor, you can see that Neoload automatically created those 3 variables to handle the token, the sync ID. You can see it's based on basically a regular expression. So let's create a new extractor. So I'm going to create on the plus button here, and let's name it. It was a text field type ID. So let's click on this zoom button here. That will help me to create the extraction. And if I search here, remember we talked about 2 maps, type mappings and types. So I'm going to type for type mappings, which is on the bottom. And you can see here, if I zoom into, you can see here we have the different component defined in my page with the ID related to it. And here we wanted to handle the object, the UI object I wanted to handle. It was, I think it's an abstract text field, or is it?
No, it was not. I think it was like M text field or.
It's an M text field. Yeah, you're correct. Where is it? Did you see it? Maybe I can search it. It will be so easier. But never mind. Here M text. If someone sees it, could tweet it. That will help me, or drop a questions in the forum. That will be great. M text field. Where is it?
Maybe it's just a text field then. Or then we're just not seeing it.
Abstract. Or let's work on the other hand. We remember we had the types. Oh no. Oh, I'm gonna in zoom because for me it's quite annoying. We had the types, so I'm gonna look at the map types, and I will have the opposite logic. So we have the object 18. So object 18 is somewhere here. Where is it? Scroll down to see it. Where is object 18?
It was up.
Here it is. So it's a type 2.
Type 2. Okay.
So let's go back to the type mappings and extract the right. Here it is. So the type 2 is, what is it? Do I see type 2? Here it is. It's a M text. You were right.
Yeah.
You were right.
We just didn't see it.
All right. So I'm going to select it like this. Pick the text, and here that will fill my this window. But I prefer to work with regular expressions. So I'm going to switch to advanced mode here, and and here what I would do is basically replace the spaces and new lines. And here, this is what I would like to extract. So I'm going to extract this. It's going to be a digital character. And remove this. So the regular expression has been defined. And here you can see it extracting number 2. So now, once I've done it, I could create the other extraction based on the text field type ID. So I'm going to click OK here. Click on Advanced. And I'm gonna press plus, and before that, I'm gonna use up this XPath because I don't want to lose time here. Up, and I'm gonna create a new. So this will be the text filter object. Okay, and now I'm going to combine with the help of Neoload XPath plus regular expression. Why XPath? Because I want only to point to the node types. So here you see I'm only taking the node types. And if I click plus here, instead of seeing all the response, I'm only seeing the definitions of the objects. I click here, I switch to advanced mode again because I like regular expression. Who doesn't like regular expression? All right, sorry.
I always get them wrong.
Wrong copy paste. Up.
Who likes to do copy paste coding?
So here I'm replacing. This is the object I want to extract. This is the one. So this is what I'm going to extract. And here you see 18, which is on the side here. Instead of referring to a regular expression here, I'm going to refer to my variable. So let's unzoom here and take the name. So it's text field type. You see it here. So I'm going to replace it. So let's zoom it up. Text field type ID. So this is a Neoload variable. And this is a big advantage with Neoload. You could reuse a variable that has been previously extracted on the next extractor. So it means you could have a logic between which helps you to start with the type, then extract the object. So here basically it's sequential. I start with this extractor, then this one, then this one. So here now I have filled my ID, and then once it's filled my ID, I'm going to extract the object from here. So that's basically the logic behind it. So and then what I have to do is replace my 18, which is here. I got my 18 with the text. I could basically replace it. It's text something, text object. And do the same for the next request. And that's it. Only this, and this is finished. So I already prepared a scenario on the same where I add users. We will use that through load test. But just take a few seconds. We have what time? Oh, it's gonna running on time. Just look at the WebSocket. So here, same recording, and here we got a WebSocket channel where if you look at the advanced button here, we get recorded response, and you can see all the response that has been arriving in the channel of the WebSocket channel. And you can see on the request. If you can zoom out, here you can see that we have a WebSocket. And in Neoload, you have the option to be either synchronous or asynchronous. By default, it will always be asynchronous. So we will have to click here, and Neoload have already made the link between the response and the requests. And then what happens, basically, you just have to click to advanced, and you will have the same logic that we had before, but instead of having HTTP request, it will be a WebSocket. And remember this. You can see that Neoload is calculating automatically the size, so you don't have to handle that. So that's a good thing about this codec. So do we have time to run a small test?
Yeah, just executing.
All right. So here we got to set up the monitoring, of course. Never run tests without monitoring. This doesn't make sense. So I've prepared a small test on the runtime section. It's a ramp-up test, so 20 user every 30 seconds. And we'll use my local computer to run the tests against this laptop. All right, so it's going to be the address book load test. And play. So I didn't mention, but for example, for the address book, I'm adding different kind of users. So if you want, you can go to open the page of the address book. So it's random. The name of the user I'm adding on the address book is totally not random, with random phone numbers, random dates, birth. So let's go. So now we currently have 20 users at the time. If I go to the runtime graph here, you will see, of course, the response time. So I can click on one of the Vaadin requests, for example, this one, and I could basically add it like this to see the response. So at the moment, you can see that.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah. So here you can see, of course. Oh, sorry. I'm currently seeing that it's at 0.5 seconds, which is very good, in fact. And of course, if I want, I could correlate with, let's say, the GVM, let's say the memory heap usage. let's say the memory usage like here. So you could combine as many metrics together, either the CPU. Let's look at your CPU of your machine. Do I start to stress your Mac, or is it nothing? At the moment, I just drag and drop that up. Basically, I'm not getting anything.
Yeah, probably because it's a Mac and not a Linux.
That's true. That's true. Let's go to the website so you can show that we have new addresses added on this portal. So I'm going to just copy paste the exact URL to avoid losing time. Here it is. And let's go to the address book. So that's what we have. Here you can see that we have this user with a 9 telephone. So this is basically
just some random data that
you can see I have added neotys.com for the email, so you can see it's our scenario is adding those users one by one. So yeah, the scenario works fine, and we are currently generating some load on your system. We have limited to 3 minutes, so that's why now we are ramping down.
Yeah.
So that's it for this session. There was many things, in fact.
Yeah,
today.
quite a lot of things.
So yeah, if you have any questions, if you have anything, just drop up a question on YouTube.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. We could go through them quickly.
Yeah.
And can you share this example script as well?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so we'll share that as well.
Yeah, no problem.
After that.
No problem. We'll do that.
Okay. Mark was asking that how well can Neoload scripts be structured for dynamic content that results from Vaadin framework. So I think this was pretty much the thing that we discussed mostly during the webinar. So you had a full support for automatic handling of synchronization IDs, cross-site request forwarding keys, and was there something else that was automatically handled?
The VIP ID and what else? Basically the technical stuff that is required are automatically handled.
Maybe, what about those type mappings? Could you maybe add like an automatic extraction of those in the future?
This is something we could think of. Basically, this is something we did with Google Web Toolkit. Yeah. So this is something we could imagine to do with Vaadin as well. Yeah. To make easier all the types will be handled automatically, so you just have to focus on the objects. Yeah.
So now this is kind of an optimization so that your script doesn't break so much, but maybe that optimization could be automatic in the future. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And quite many people, Mark, Rudiger and Manura, and I think somebody else as well, asked about this push support. So we saw some WebSocket examples as well. So you do have this WebSocket support as well, and it supports also these sizes, which is kind of an addition over those standard communication mechanisms that needs to be added by Atmosphere framework there. So you support that out of the box as well.
Yeah, and the good thing is we saw it when we link synchronous calls. Yeah, we are able to calculate response time. So that's
and you can also record.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because this was a kind of a good feature for Neoload, because some other load testing tools cannot handle the automatic recording. So then you have to like manually construct these test cases. With WebSocket. So that's kind of a very, very good thing. And then Artem was asking if you can somehow kind of combine like automatic acceptance test with load testing, because they kind of basically share the same scripts typically behind the scenes. So in this case, you could have a fill in new address to your address book. Or new contact to your address book.
So you mean automatic acceptance?
Yeah, so that's typically probably tools like TestBench, Vaadin TestBench, and Selenium. Yeah, plain Selenium.
So we have integration with several regression testing tools. Selenium is the one. We have also Tricentis is another one. We have RunRx is soon will be available.
Yeah.
So
Vaadin Dispense is also based on Selenium, so probably might actually work out of the box.
Yeah, because you have already prepared everything, so that will be much more easier.
Yeah, but we could actually test this in the future that it works together. Yeah.
So the good thing is we have a dedicated driver. So once you don't have to instrument your scripts. You just replace one line in your Selenium scripts, and that's already you have the integration built with both tools.
Yeah.
So that's the good thing. So Neoload will give the order to Selenium, and then Selenium will sends back us the timers measured in Selenium.
Yeah.
So that's how it works.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's enough for this time. We have already spent almost 1 hour, so we will post these links and also the examples to the forum post where this webinar was hosted, and you can try out Neoload and load testing Vaadin applications with it.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks for your time, and if you have any questions, just drop me an email.
So we will be monitoring Twitter, of course, and the forum and all the channels extensively during the next week.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye.